Imagine your grandfather dozing off in the middle of a conversation. Or your mother falling asleep after breakfast, then again after lunch, then again before dinner. You smile, maybe. You think, he's just getting older. She's just tired. But here's what the doctors aren't saying loudly enough, and what the science has been screaming for years. That constant daytime sleepiness is not normal. It is a warning. Inside the aging brain, something extraordinary and deeply fragile is happening. The human body runs on a biological clock, a 24-hour rhythm called the circadian cycle, orchestrated by a tiny cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. In young, healthy individuals, this clock keeps the body awake during daylight and pulls it into deep, restorative sleep at night. It is elegant. It is precise. But as we age, that precision begins to erode. After the age of 60, the brain produces significantly less melatonin, the hormone that signals to every cell in the body that night has arrived. The suprachiasmatic nucleus itself begins to shrink. The architecture of sleep changes dramatically. Seniors spend far less time in slow-wave sleep, the deep, physically restorative stage, and in REM sleep, the stage where memory consolidates and emotional processing occurs. Instead, they cycle through lighter sleep stages repeatedly, waking more often, sleeping less efficiently. So the body tries to compensate. And it compensates during the day. But here is where doctors are raising their voices. Excessive daytime sleepiness, clinically defined as struggling to stay awake during normal waking hours, feeling an overwhelming urge to sleep even after a full night in bed, is not simply the brain making up for lost nighttime rest. In seniors, it is frequently the surface symptom of something deeper and more dangerous quietly unfolding beneath. Neurologists now understand that disrupted sleep in older adults can be an early signal of neurodegeneration. Studies published in leading journals including Nature Neuroscience and JAMA Neurology have found that poor sleep quality in people over 65 is strongly associated with the accumulation of amyloid beta plaques, the toxic protein clusters that are the biological fingerprint of Alzheimer's disease. The brain cleans itself during deep sleep. Without it, the toxins build. There is a system inside your brain called the glymphatic system, and most people have never heard of it, yet it may be one of the most important discoveries in neuroscience in the last 2 decades. Think of it as the brain's overnight janitorial crew. While you sleep deeply, cerebrospinal fluid pulses through channels around blood vessels, flushing out metabolic waste, including amyloid beta and tau proteins, the very substances linked to cognitive decline and dementia. This cleaning only happens during sleep. Primarily during deep sleep. When a senior is chronically sleep-deprived, or when their sleep becomes too shallow, too fragmented, too interrupted, the glymphatic system cannot complete its work. Night after night, the waste accumulates. The brain, quite literally, begins to drown in its own byproducts. And the body, sensing something is wrong, grows desperate for the restorative sleep it is no longer getting. The result? An overwhelming, irresistible pull toward sleep during the day. But daytime sleepiness in seniors carries another shadow, one that most families miss entirely until it is too late. Sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep, is dramatically underdiagnosed in older adults. Unlike younger patients who snore loudly and obviously, many seniors with sleep apnea present quietly. Their partners may not notice. They themselves may not notice. What they notice is the exhaustion. The heaviness behind the eyes. The inability to concentrate. The strange, persistent fog that follows them from morning to afternoon. Each apnea episode, however brief, deprives the brain and heart of oxygen. Repeatedly. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of times each night. Cardiologists have documented the relationship between untreated sleep apnea and elevated risk of hypertension, heart failure, stroke, and atrial fibrillation. For an aging cardiovascular system already working harder than it once did, this is not a minor inconvenience. It is a slow, silent assault. There is also the matter of medication, something rarely discussed openly in the context of senior fatigue. The average American over 65 takes between 4 and 5 prescription medications daily. Many of these, antihistamines, certain blood pressure medications, antidepressants, muscle relaxants, pain medications, carry sedation as a side effect. When combined, these effects multiply. Doctors call this polypharmacy. Families call it grandma just seems tired lately. The line between medication side effect and genuine neurological warning sign is thin and easily missed. And then there is the emotional dimension, the one that clinical charts and lab results rarely capture. Depression in seniors is profoundly underdiagnosed. Not because doctors don't care, but because older adults were raised in generations that did not name their internal suffering. They describe it differently. They say I'm just tired. They say I don't have energy like I used to. They say I just don't feel like doing much anymore. What they don't say, often because they don't have the language, or because they don't want to burden anyone, is that the world has become dim. That getting out of bed feels like lifting the weight of everything they've lost. That sleep is the only place the grief goes quiet. Hypersomnia, sleeping excessively, is one of the primary, most reliable symptoms of late-life depression. And yet families sit across from their aging parents at dinner tables, watching them fade, and think, this is just age. It is one of the most quietly devastating misreads a family can make. There is also something called chronobiological disruption, a term that sounds complicated but describes something painfully simple. As people age, their internal clock doesn't just weaken, it shifts. Many seniors begin to feel sleepy earlier in the evening and wake far too early in the morning, a pattern called advanced sleep phase syndrome. Their body is running on a completely different schedule than the world around them. Social isolation, reduced exposure to natural sunlight, and decreased physical activity, all extraordinarily common in seniors, make this clock drift even worse. The less they move, the less sunlight reaches their eyes, the more their circadian rhythm loses its anchor. And without that anchor, sleep becomes chaotic, shallow, and ultimately, exhausting. So what should families actually do with all of this? First, take it seriously. Do not normalize it. If someone you love is sleeping more than 9 hours at night and still battling sleepiness through the day, consistently, over weeks, that pattern deserves medical attention, not reassurance. Second, request a sleep study. A polysomnography test can identify sleep apnea, oxygen drops, restless leg syndrome, and other silent destroyers of sleep architecture that no routine checkup will catch. Third, review every single medication with their doctor. Ask directly, could any of these be contributing to fatigue? Polypharmacy is real, it is common, and it is frequently overlooked. Fourth, ask about their mood. Not once. Over time. Gently, genuinely, and without rushing toward fixing. Sometimes a senior needs to be asked 3 or 4 times before they trust the question enough to answer honestly. Fifth, understand that natural light is medicine. A 20-minute morning walk outdoors, or even sitting by a bright window, helps reset the circadian clock in ways no supplement can fully replicate. And finally, understand that the aging brain is not a lost cause. It is a living, responsive organ that reacts to care, to intervention, to being taken seriously. Daytime sleepiness is not just tiredness. In seniors, it is the body knocking on a door, asking, quietly but urgently, to be heard before it's too late. If this made you think of someone you love, share it with them, it might be the most important thing they watch today. Like and comment below, has anyone in your family been quietly struggling with this?